Hello, everyone. The saga of Harry and Meghan continues to unfold in the most astonishing, almost poetic way. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer irony of it all. Here's Harry, a man who has branded himself as a champion of racial equality, a voice against discrimination. Yet, his own past is riddled with missteps so glaring they refuse to be ignored. No matter how many heartfelt speeches he delivers or how many carefully crafted interviews Meghan guides him through, those past mistakes remain stubbornly in the cool spotlight. Now, the latest twist in this ongoing drama. Former employees are reportedly joining forces for a lawsuit. And just like that, the skeletons in Harry's closet are putting on a full-blown performance for the world to see. It's almost as if karma has finally come knocking. But I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? Let's take a little trip down memory lane. Remember 2005? That moment when Harry, in what can only be described as a spectacular lapse in judgment, thought it would be amusing to dressing up as a Nazi for Halloween. A Nazi. As if there were any doubt that Harry is as out of touch with reality as he is with his own privilege. The backlash was inevitable because, frankly, it was impossible to ignore. Let's take a moment to appreciate the fact that this was someone who didn't even realize why it was wrong until others had to spell it out for him. Just think about that. Harry, now positioning himself as a moral authority, once failed to understand why glorifying the Nazi regime for fun might be, well, a terrible idea. And yet, here he is today, giving TED Talks on unconscious bias and racism. The hypocrisy is almost overwhelming. But let's not pretend this was just a foolish mistake of youth that we can easily dismiss. No, not at all. Fast forward to 2009, Harry, now serving in the British Army, was caught using some of the most offensive racial slurs imaginable. Really, Harry? Not only was it deeply offensive, but it also showed a shocking level of ignorance. And this wasn't just an impulsive teenage blunder. He was a grown adult. A grown man in full military uniform didn't see a problem with it. Can you even begin to grasp the sheer level of cluelessness here? This is the same guy who left the UK claiming to be a victim of systemic racism, throwing his own family under the bus while pointing fingers at everyone else. Convenient, isn't it? The very person who now expects us to believe he's a beacon of progressivism, an advocate for marginalized communities, calling out racism wherever he sees it. It's almost as if the universe decided to turn the tables and serve him a hefty dose of his own rhetoric, neatly plated for all to see. But you know what really gets under my skin? The fact that Harry is, quite literally, the only modern royal who was sent to sensitivity training. Let that sink in. Sensitivity training for a prince. His behavior was so appalling that even the royal family, the same family that largely downplayed Prince Andrew's so-called misunderstanding with Epstein, had no choice but to intervene, sending him to special classes just to teach him basic respect. And let's not even get started on that painfully awkward moment with comedian Stephen K. Amos. Harry, completely oblivious to his own privilege, casually remarked, "You don't sound like a black chap." You've got to be kidding. Me. And, of course, as expected, he never apologized. If that isn't the definition of tone-deaf, I don't know what is. Now, fast forward to today. Harry, comfortably settled in his Montecito mansion, living the high life with Meghan while playing the role of a moral crusader. The irony is almost laughable. It's remarkable how easily he brushes off his past mistakes, especially when there's a camera rolling. But here's where things get even more interesting. These former employees, now reportedly coming together for a lawsuit, have likely had enough. They've seen both sides of Harry, the charming prince who once had the world at his feet, and the so-called enlightened figure that Meghan's PR machine has been working overtime to manufacture. And speaking of Meghan, isn't it fascinating how suddenly, Meghan goes radio silent whenever these stories about Harry's questionable past resurface. The woman who once took pride in standing firmly by her man now seems to be keeping an unusually low profile. Could it be that even she realizes this is a mess too big to spin? And just to twist the knife a little further, let's talk about the stark contrast between Harry and the working royals. William and Catherine are out there doing meaningful work, making a real impact, showing growth, and, dare I say it, acting like responsible adults. Meanwhile, Harry's entire career seems to be built on playing the victim, all while his past missteps resurface in the most ironic way possible. The real tragedy? Harry had every opportunity to grow, to mature, and to leave his past behind. Instead, he chose the easy path, blaming everyone else while pretending he's somehow above the very things he once did. And then there's King Charles. Despite Harry's relentless personal attacks, Charles has remained composed, focused on his duties. And through it all, King Charles has continued to serve with grace, a striking contrast to his younger son, who seems to believe that complaining from a distance is somehow a substitute for real work. Meanwhile, Catherine remains the very picture of poise and dignity, weathering every storm without so much as a flinch. She's out there demonstrating what true nobility looks like, while Harry and Meghan continue lobbing accusations from the comfort of their California hideaway. The most disappointing part of this entire fiasco? Harry was given every opportunity to make amends. The royal family provided him with support, time, and space to grow. But instead of learning from his mistakes, he chose to point fingers while conveniently trying to erase his own missteps from public memory. Now, with a lawsuit from his former employees looming, it'll be interesting to see how Harry and Meghan attempt to spin this latest disaster. Will they pull out the victim card yet again? Or will Meghan, the master of controlling the narrative, suddenly find herself busy with some other engagement? This isn't just about Harry's past mistakes. It's about hypocrisy in its most blatant form. Here's a man who has built a career out of lecturing others on their faults, while completely ignoring the glaring flaws in his own character. And no matter how much he hides behind his celebrity status or the safety of his California fortress, the past has a way of catching up. Will these former employees' stories finally come to light? Will Meghan, as she has done many times before, quietly step back and distance herself from the fallout? Only time will tell. But one thing is absolutely clear. While Harry and Meghan continue their attempts to reinvent themselves as the ultimate symbols of virtue and morality, the working royals are simply getting on with the job. They're serving, working and leading by example, demonstrating true leadership, grace, and responsibility. And that's something no amount of media spin or carefully curated public relations can ever overshadow. It's almost mind-boggling how conveniently Harry and Meghan slip into the role of victims in a world where real struggles happen every single day, where actual discrimination and hardships persist. Yet, here they are, sitting comfortably in their Montecito mansion, acting as if they're the ones who have been wronged. It's honestly laughable. The audacity is astounding. These two have turned self-pity into a full-time career, all while managing to dodge any real accountability for their own actions. Harry, in particular, seems to have built an entire lifestyle around blaming others for his shortcomings. And let's not overlook how Harry and Meghan have expertly crafted a version of themselves that conveniently aligns with every trendy, virtuous cause. Their public personas have been so meticulously curated It's as if they're checking off every box on the progressive checklist, from championing mental health awareness to throwing their weight behind causes that sound great in theory. It's almost as though they've memorized exactly what the media. They know exactly what the media wants to hear, and they deliver it flawlessly. But behind every grand statement is a trail of hypocrisy that's becoming harder and harder to ignore. Take, for example, their constant preaching about privacy, only to turn around and seize every opportunity to put their personal drama on full display for a paycheck. It's almost as if they've completely forgotten what privacy actually means. And this isn't just the occasional contradiction, it's the very foundation of their brand. Nothing highlights this better than their Netflix deal. They signed a multi-million-dollar contract promising to create content that aligns with their so-called values, only to immediately contradict those values in their relentless pursuit of fame and fortune. The hypocrisy is staggering. One moment, they're insisting that privacy and freedom are their top priorities. The next, they're signing deals that demand they put every aspect of their personal lives under a microscope. But of course, none of this is surprising. For years, Harry and Meghan have worked tirelessly to craft a narrative in which they are modern-day martyrs, champions of the oppressed, fighting for justice from the comfort of their multi-million-dollar estate. They've taken self-serving activism to a level most could only imagine. They want to be seen as boundary pushers for equality, all while living in a world of luxury that the vast majority will never experience. The optics are almost comical, yet somehow they manage to pull it off time and time again. And then there's Meghan's carefully constructed persona, a blend of self-empowerment and victimhood designed to strike just the right chord. There's an almost uncanny pattern to how her career has unfolded. She's seamlessly woven her so-called rags-to-riches story into the broader struggles of marginalized communities, turning every speech, every appearance, and every new endeavor into a personal victory. Yet the reality is starkly different. She is part of one of the wealthiest families in the world and has no real understanding of the challenges. Meghan's brand of activism feels more like opportunism. She has mastered the art of appearing engaged without actually doing anything of real substance. And while Harry and Meghan's carefully curated woke personas continue to grab headlines, more and more people are starting to see through the facade. People may buy into a narrative for a while, but sooner or later, the truth catches up. And the truth is that these two have been caught time and time again making hypocritical statements and engaging in behaviors that directly contradict the causes they claim to champion. Whether it's Harry's complete lack of self-awareness regarding his past actions or Meghan's self-righteous attitude that seems to come with a built-in "how dare you question me" response, the cracks in their polished image are beginning to show. Now, as they face growing scrutiny and former employees come forward with their grievances, one has to wonder, how much longer can they keep up this act of moral superiority? For years, they've lectured the world about accountability while conveniently ignoring their own missteps. But as lawsuits pile up and more stories come to light, it's becoming harder for Harry and Meghan to maintain the illusion of being flawless, enlightened figures. The reality is setting in, and it's a tough pill to swallow. Once the media's golden couple, they've revealed themselves to be nothing more than hypocrites and opportunists. Their track record of actions, so often contradicting the very values they claim to champion, is finally catching up with them. There's no more hiding behind carefully crafted sound bites and media appearances. The people who have worked closely with them, the ones who've seen their true selves behind closed doors, are now speaking out, and they have the receipts to back it up. The carefully polished image they've worked so hard to project is beginning to crumble. And the most ironic part? Harry and Meghan continue to Harry and Meghan continue to push their narrative of victimhood and moral superiority, convinced that their actions are justified because they claim to be speaking truth to power. But in reality, they have become experts in self-promotion. Two individuals who talk about making the world a better place, while their actions reveal what truly matters to them: money, fame, and power. As their carefully crafted image crumbles, it's hard not to see the irony. No amount of PR spin can undo the damage now. The more people come forward, the clearer it becomes. Who they are behind closed doors is far from the image they've desperately tried to sell. And so, the world watches as they try to dig themselves out of yet another mess. Will they stick to their usual script, playing the "will they fall back on the victim card yet again?" Or will they finally face the reality that their carefully crafted narrative is nothing more than a fragile house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment? The drama surrounding Harry and Meghan has reached new heights, and as more people see through the cracks in their facade, one thing is certain: the public's fascination with their saga is far from over. It's almost impossible not to laugh at the absurdity of their ongoing performance. The sheer audacity with which they continue to preach about equality, social justice, and moral superiority is staggering. The fact that they've managed to convince so many people to buy into their sanctimonious act for this long is both astonishing and deeply frustrating. What's most baffling, though, is the almost cartoonish level of hypocrisy woven into every public statement, every interview, and every photo op. It's as if they truly believe the world won't notice. But the reality is, people are finally seeing through the illusion, and it's fascinating to watch it unravel, one sharp comment at a time. Let's start with Harry. Oh, Harry, the royal with a chip on his shoulder and a past full of missteps that would make anyone with a hint of self-awareness cringe. For years, he played the role of a modern-day crusader, championing causes he barely seemed to understand while conveniently ignoring the biggest issue of all, his own history. And no, this isn't just about that infamous Nazi costume, though for most, a scandal like that would have been career-ending. Somehow, Harry managed to turn himself into the victim, rebranding as an enlightened advocate, as if a few years of self-proclaimed activism could erase the sheer recklessness of that moment. If he genuinely cared about the causes he now supports, he would have taken a hard look at his past and made real changes. But instead, he's just gotten better at shifting blame while acting like the ultimate moral authority on everything from mental health to race relations. And don't even get me started on Meghan. The way she constantly paints herself as a beacon of virtue, voice for the oppressed, isn't just irritating, it's downright infuriating. Meghan, who conveniently found her way into the royal spotlight through sheer opportunism, now fancies herself a woke icon, despite having little real understanding of the issues she claims to champion. She's the perfect example of performative activism, all style, no substance. Her entire career, from her Suits days to her post-royal humanitarian ventures, has been one carefully curated PR stunt after another, all designed to elevate her own image. And the saddest part? She still doesn't seem to grasp why people are starting to see through the act. Together, Meghan and Harry have become a masterclass in hypocrisy. For years, they've told us how hard their lives have been, how they've struggled. They cry mistreatment while living in one of the most lavish estates in the world, surrounded by the very privileges they claim to despise. They lecture us about systemic racism and injustice, yet their actions, constantly monetizing their personal struggles, speak far louder than their words. If they truly cared about the causes they champion, If they had a real passion for social justice, wouldn't their lifestyle reflect those values? Instead of playing the victim every time they're criticized, they could actually lead by example, putting their wealth and influence to real use. But no, that would take self-awareness, something both Harry and Meghan seem to lack in abundance. What's truly astonishing is how long they've managed to get away with it. The media has played along, pushing their victim narrative and ignoring the glaring contradictions in their story. But as time goes on, as the cracks in their carefully crafted personas widen, the truth is becoming harder to ignore. Harry and Meghan are not the moral role models they've tried to present themselves as. They're simply two people who learned how to capitalize on their royal status for financial gain. And when the world started catching on, they flipped the script, embracing a victim narrative in hopes that no one would question it. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed the grand irony of their unraveling in real time. The hypocrisy, the contradictions, the complete lack of self-awareness. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. But let's be honest, this story is far from over. The drama will keep unfolding, and as more skeletons tumble out of their closets, there are bound to be even more jaw-dropping revelations. So buckle up, this ride is just getting started. And before you go, don't forget to hit that like button. If you've enjoyed watching this royal charade come undone, there's plenty more where this came from. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts on Harry and Meghan's latest antics. Are you over it? Or do you still believe in their so-called crusade for justice? Either way, we'd love to hear your take. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another update on this never-ending saga. Who knows what kind of absurdity will unfold next? Stay tuned, things are only going to get juicier from here. Thanks for watching, and remember, when it comes to Harry and Meghan, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Catch you next time.